Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My clock says noon. My computer says 11:59, but we're going to go with noon. So welcome back. Welcome to day 2 of the Black Student Success Week. I'm Dr. Pilar Nova Huffman, and it's truly an honor to be in community with every one of you all today. This week is more than a conversation. It's about continuation. So through the vision resource, we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So through the Vision Resource Center, we are creating a space to stay connected. More than just this week, we're going to move forward to make sure that we're sharing resources and staying together as one beyond today or this week. And as Dr. Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So let's work together. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to be intentional about that. So the light that we bring to our system is going to make impactful change for generations to come. So because we're not alone in this work, I'm going to ask Carl to join me and welcome our sponsors and thank them.
Absolutely, and forgive me, I'm going back and forth between capability on my screen and my phone. So I'm just gonna wing it. We want to thank all of our sponsors. You all have been amazing. Keenan, the Chancellor's Office, Los Angeles, Community College District, of course, Long Beach City College. You can see them all there. Compton College. We appreciate all of you, and we couldn't do it without you. I also want to give a special shout out of thanks to Rena and Carmel, our tech team, who make all of this possible. They're not responsible for my laggy internet. That's a Long Beach thing. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to our marketing team. How many folks are feeling this year's theme and marketing? It's just so beautiful. When you look at it, it feels great. So thanks to our sponsors and thanks to all of those folks. And to frame the day, we're talking about a return on investment, economic liberation, and not just earnings. We have some great panelists to talk about that, so I won't expound on it. I'll pass it over back to you, Dr. Huffman, to introduce our first speaker.
Yes, thank you, Carl. So it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Nicole Smith, research professor and chief economist at the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. Dr. Nicole Smith is a research professor and chief economist at the Georgetown University Center of Education, where she leads the center's economic and methodology, work. One of her primary functions at the center is developing a framework for restructuring long-term occupational and educational projections. This framework forms the underlying methodology for Help Wanted, Recovery, and the Future of Work, 3 reports in an ongoing series that projects education demand for occupations in the U.S. economy. She is also part of a team of economists working on a project to map, forecast, and monitor human capital development and career pathways. Her current research investigates the role of education and social economic factors in intergenerational education mobility. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nicole Smith.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here to talk about this topic that sits at the intersection of economics, equity, and the future of higher ed. The idea of ROI as economic liberation challenges us to rethink the purpose of post-secondary education. For too long, we've treated higher ed as a private good, right? That's something that individuals choose to pursue themselves for their own financial gain. But anytime we look closely at the data, it becomes clear that ROI is not just a financial metric, it's a moral one. Higher ed can be a powerful tool of mobility. It can open doors, it can expand opportunity, it can break cycles of poverty. But we must understand that higher ed can also reproduce inequality when access, affordability, and program quality are uneven. Today, shortly, I just want to explore how ROI can serve as a lens for accountability and liberation, and how institutions can align their missions with outcomes to transform lives. Next slide, please. So here we just want to set the tone. And I think, we want to talk a little bit about 4 grounding ideas. The first is that higher ed remains one of the strongest levers for upward mobility. So we have to accept that this is the way in which you actually move up. The second lever is data-driven decision-making, right? Students deserve to have transparent, accessible information about wages, employment, career progression, and institutions need reliable data to guide program design and resource allocation. We must avoid narrow definitions of success. Success isn't just getting, a job, but workforce alignment matters. It's getting something that you feel competent in. It's something that you can you put forward for your family. Critical thinking, adaptability, civic engagement are essential for us to have a healthy democracy. And then finally, action steps for stakeholders are funding models that award not only outcomes, but access. We found so many times there's an emphasis now on outcomes, and we've forgotten about access. Next slide, please. So what's the current state of affairs? Before we talk about solutions, we need to be honest about the current state of mobility in the US, and the picture is very sobering. Mobility is stagnant. It is. Compared to other developed nations, the US shows one of the lowest rates of upward mobility across generations. I mean, we talk about pulling ourselves up from the bootstraps. Literally, the United States, for other developed countries, is one of the least upwardly economically mobile. In other words, your education is often determined by what your father did or what your mother did. And far too often we find that a person's parents are what will determine your ability to move forward. Racial disparities persist, and we know in this economic environment, any talk of this is almost shut down immediately. It's been extremely hard in the last year for us in higher ed to consider, continue speaking about racial disparities and to highlight that they persist, and the fact that something needs to be done to ensure that we still have equitable access. Black, American Indian, Hispanic individuals remain disproportionately clustered at lower income levels, while white and Asian Americans tend to remain at higher levels. What we find is that once you look at even our institutions, our more selective colleges and universities are disproportionately enrolling white and Asian students, and we have we're underserved when looking at Black students in those locations. Geography matters. Where you grow up can shape your economic trajectory, and that's not mobility. If where you're born and where you grow up can shape what happens to you, that's not mobility. That's just the same cycle over and over again. So we have structural barriers, unequal investments by parents, variations in school quality, labor market discrimination didn't just go away. It's still there. Disparities in social capital all lead to some of these outcomes that we're trying to decide on. Slide 4. Next slide, please. So let's turn to what works. The models and solutions that show real promise. First, we need curriculum reorientation. High ROI programs like nursing, healthcare, IT, cybersecurity, skills trade, they consistently deliver strong outcomes. Institutions willing to prune low-performing programs and reinvest in high-demand fields see better outcomes. So we have to make these hard decisions about which ones go, which ones stay. And there's one thing I want to talk about. There's a lot of talk about getting rid of these programs. You can't just do that. You can't just decrease them. You also have to replace them with something else. So work-based learning, apprenticeships, internships, employment partnerships, all of these strengthen employability and accelerates ROI. We must enhance student supports. Students don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because life gets in the way. Transportation issues, childcare issues, textbook costs are real barriers. So we do need wraparound services and structural pathways that dramatically improve completion rates. And then third, policy interventions like increasing Pell, making Pell non-taxable, directing funding towards programs with strong labor market alignment, they are also powerful levers that can move us along. And our final slide that I want to talk about today is the equity imperative. Now, it's the E word. And I say that because I've been in so many meetings where, people roll their eyes the moment you mention it. But as we think about ROI and economic liberation, equity must be at the center. Without intentional action, the same groups historically excluded will continue to be left behind. We have to address racial and economic disparities. We have to talk about it. We have to measure it. We have to know the extent to which it exists. And we have to target investments in communities with limited opportunities. We need culturally responsive supports. We need race-conscious policies that acknowledge historical disadvantage. So the mere fact that our federal government has moved in a separate direction doesn't mean that those gaps no longer exist. They're still there. And in fact, they might be increasing in this undercurrent. So we have to ensure that we close gender gaps, support caregiving students, primarily women, who balance education with financial responsibilities, and then building social capital matters. Talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. You could be as smart as you are. If you don't have that chance, you will never get that opportunity. So equity is not a side initiative. It is the moral core of ROI. If the returns of higher ed are not equitably distributed, we have not fulfilled our obligation. Equity must be central. So thank you for your time.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. That was amazing. Your work encourages us to push everything forward as we continue to reflect, but also we continue to act. So with that, we're going to go ahead and have a poll. Carl, can I ask you to go ahead and move that poll up for us here?
Let's do it. Prompt number 1, how is your institution currently defining student success? And you can see all of the options there. Get into it. Please get active on it and return it. These numbers matter.
And so we want to also acknowledge that as the responses are coming in, we will have sketch, right? We have the sketch happening. And Carl, what's happening with the sketches?
Well, as you can see, I mean, this one might be the best one ever. We got it in color. It's giving a recap of everything that's going on. So the more you engage, the better and more dynamic this will be, and the more we'll be able to refer to it for instructions on how to make Black student success a real thing in the coming year.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so now it's time for our panel, right?
It is.
Cool.
So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and introduce our panelists.
I'll introduce them and then you give us the breakdown on the questions because you are a master at keeping us on task. And I think we're doing all right on time now. So I want to give our panelists as much time as we can. I won't spend too much time on the intros, but please, we have a power packed panel here of dynamic leaders. I encourage you all to Google them, find out more about them, and follow up with them for more info and possible mentorship. First up, we have Dr. Frank Harris III, Director of the Community College Equity Assessment Lab, also known as SEAL at San Diego State University. Also, Dr. Sue Ginges, CEO of California Competes. Dr. Kenyatta Lovett, Principal at Education Strategy Group. And finally, Dr. Nicole Smith, Research Professor and Chief Economist at Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. So with that, let's get into the questions, Dr. Huffman.
Thank you, Carl. So our very first question is for you, Dr. Lovett. How would you define ROI and economic mobility?
Sure. And I want to double click really quickly on Dr. Smith's comments about higher education and rethinking their role. The polls really revealed that where completion and access were the assumed conduits for economic mobility. And we're now in a space where we recognize higher education needs to provide much more than that. So I just want to double click on that. And the other one, to give a shout out to Dr. Curry for Compton College, is just the regional differences that even when you look at the data, sometimes even Compton College can be mixed in with Beverly Hills in their data, right? And doesn't tell the full story back to this point of ROI. There are two ways to look at ROI from my perspective. From the student, it's two things. It's affordability and its applicability. Can I get access, and then will it be affordable for me to go to college? And then what can I do exactly with that degree? But the way we're looking at it for institutions, it's really about a logic model of inputs of what is the cost of attendance for a student, outputs, what about that degree, job placement and wages, and then of course outcomes, and what does the economic mobility situation look like for a student. So a lot of places around the nation, different states have started to create their own frameworks for cost of attendance, how job placement and wages look, and to determine are students better off by going to college or if they just go straight out of high school into a job. And it's a really critical question that we have right now when we think about a lot of the new graduates are struggling to find jobs. I just saw in Business Week in Bloomberg, parents are spending more than $50,000 to help their kids land jobs after graduation. So when we think about the ROI framework, higher education really has to start to measure and demonstrate not only what does it look like immediately after graduation, 5 years from now, but 10 or 20 years from now, did they position that student for success in their career, whatever their choices are.
Thank you, Dr. Lovett. And you brought up a good point, the measurement and how demonstration is going to be important in the years to come. Are there any other panelists that might have something to add to that? Maybe Dr. Frank Harris?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Happy to follow. I'm particularly struck by everything that Dr. Smith just shared with us, but there were sort of two quotes that really resonated with me. I wrote them down. ROI is not just a financial metric, it's a moral one. And then the other one, I'm sure that a lot of us were struck by this, is equity is the moral core of ROI. And I raise those because I think sometimes when we think about ROI, we do sort of see it and think about it as just, a financial metric or an accountability measure, especially when we think about how the current administration has utilized it, has weaponized it in many ways to punish institutions. And so for me, it was refreshing to hear someone, right, like Dr. Smith, who's been involved in this work for a lot longer than most of us have, that talked about, there doesn't necessarily need to be an inherent tension between accountability and all the things that ROI prioritizes. And we can still make sure that equity is at the core and the center, that we don't have to divorce equity from ROI. And I think that that's something that has to be a big part of our dialogue, right? I know that the next question kind of talks about, what should institutions do when it comes to redefining ROI, particularly for Black students. I think actually defining it locally, what does it mean within our local context, right? How do we make sure that, hey, if equity and completion are what we're all about at Compton College, right? How do we have conversations about ROI that lets folks understand that it doesn't mean that ROI is not, it's driving us away, or that we're abandoning our focus on equity and completion, particularly for institutions like Compton that are very intentional in not only enrolling and creating opportunities, right, for diverse students, but also that has done some things, again, right, that strong investments in enhancing student supports, which was, again, one of the ideas that Dr. Smith shared with us. So I'll stop there, but those are some initial thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. That's going to bring us to the framing question, and I'd like to invite Dr. Jen Jess to maybe talk about this. How should institutions redefine ROI if we are truly committed to economic mobility for Black students?
Yeah, I love this question. I have so many thoughts about it. One is like, why are we, and I follow up on Dr. Harris's comments and thinking about like, why are we even talking about ROI and what happens to students after they complete? And I think it's worth reminding ourselves, particularly those that are at institutions, that like higher ed was designed for a different student and with different goals in mind. So we really are thinking about how do we transform higher education for today's students and today's purpose. And I think, there was the great, the danger of the single story. So of what a college student is and what a college is. And thinking about today's students who are, are coming from, more likely to come from low income backgrounds, more likely to be Black students, more likely to be women, first generation, immigrants, on and on, not the very narrow student for which even like our 1960 master plan was thinking about. And so for today's student, it's not just, as we thought about like the access conversation and then the completion conversation, now thinking about when we have a different population of students whose families and whose communities, because we are so segregated, do not have access to the, I feel like the occupational capital professional networks where you could be at the Thanksgiving dinner table and have a conversation around jobs and internships and where you should go, and then the relationships in your home to make that reality. How do we do that? And I feel like institutions have a really important role here to step in and say, let's help address those gaps. Personally thinking about, when I went to college, I feel like probably part of like maybe the first access generation in some sense is when I finished college. Um, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with a bachelor's degree. I had a bachelor's degree in statistics, and it was literally like a flyer that said, go work on Wall Street. I did not know what Wall Street was, but I'd never been on a plane, and they told me how much to make. And I said, I could do that for $1,000 a week. Got on the plane for the first time, went to New York, worked on Wall Street, did not know what it was. But that was my first job because I didn't know what to do. And I happened to get this email, and it was a nonprofit, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, who connected students of color to Wall Street. Um, and I think that's the sort of thing that we should be thinking about is for students like Sujin decades ago, students like Sujin today, how do we help students make these connections around, the connections of the education they're learning? And I want to be clear, for California Competes, as we were digging into this question around ROI, is a college degree still pays off? And I know there are so many questions around value. There's not a better bet, a better investment than a college degree, stocks, bonds, gold. And most Californians, 78% of California bachelor's degree holders see a positive ROI within 10 years. And this is across racial ethnic groups. But not surprisingly, this is uneven across racial ethnic groups. So we see that rate is lowest for Black graduates. It's at 73%, so still most, but we could do better, which is compared to like 79% of white, 82% of Asian graduates. And I also want to factor in like where you live matters too. And Dr. Harris was talking about the great work that Compton does. And what we do see is that folks on the coast in California have greater exposure to economic opportunity generally, compared to those like in the Inland Empire, where only 70% of graduates see a positive ROI compared to like 84% in the Bay Area. So if we think about a Black graduate who is in Inland California, could be navigating a racial gap and a geographic one. So thinking about these complexities as we think about supporting students. So I think as institutions are thinking about how they redefine ROI, and if we're truly committed to economic mobility, we need to really think about broadening how we define success. And I flagged some of our own research, but I do think ultimately it goes back to talking to students, family, community members around what do they need and what do they want? Why are you enrolling at my institution? What do you hope to get out of it? And then can you actually make that bigger for them?
I love that. Asking them what do they need and what are they looking forward to, and making that success mean something for them, right? Being there to support them. So thank you for that. I'm interested in knowing, Dr. Nicole Smith, what is your feedback for that question? How should institutions redefine ROI if we are truly committed to economic mobility for Black students?
So thank you for that. Before I answer the question, I wanted to speak a little bit to the poll. I just saw the outcome of the poll, where so many of the respondents said that the definition of success was just graduation and completion, and that's absolutely looking in the rearview mirror, and it's really the wrong-minded. We have to redefine what success means in order for us to really have a more accountable program. So if I had to think of one, I would say we have to build program level accountability that's much more tied to labor market outcomes. And in so doing, that single move will force us to realign what we're doing. I think it we can potentially shift institution center of gravity. So instead of measuring success by enrollment or head count or diversity of incoming classes, the institution is now accountable for what happens after students leave. So what's wages, what's employment, what's mobility, what's debt to earnings ratios? And, I loved Dr. Sunjay's explanation that the actual degree still matters. That's absolutely true. Your bachelor's degree still matters. She also said that, the distribution of outcomes differs by race, ethnicity, but you know what? It also differs by program of study. It differs by what we take. It differs by what we do with it, what occupations we're in. And that's information that people don't have. We need to be much more transparent about exactly the value of these college degrees because everything is so complex now that you need to know exactly where you end up. There's a magic phrase we haven't spoken about today that is throwing everything off and throwing everything we know about college off, and it's AI, generative AI. And, you hear so much talk about how it's redistributing opportunity, how it's transforming the way we work, how we do work, which programs matter, which entry-level jobs no longer exist, and which ones that require significant amounts of cognitive ability and skill that will survive in the same way that other jobs have survived in the past. So we need to have these concrete conversations about which jobs, which ones, and institutions themselves can't hide behind traditional enrollment numbers anymore. They must prune, they must redesign, they must reinvest, they must drive resource allocation towards what works and what matters. And finally, we have to measure it. And we have to know what the outcomes are by different groups of people. There's a lot of drive by this federal government to cloak all of that into equity for all. Well, opportunity for all. And when you do that, you just don't even understand how it differs by gender, by race, by ethnicity, by group. It matters. And with all of this talk about the enrollment cliff or the demographic cliff, those cliffs aren't just random people. There are individuals with specific characteristics that are disproportionately underrepresented, and we need to make sure that we do something to close those gaps.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And that brings us to the action part of the questions for today. And I'm going to open up to any one of the panelists that cares to answer. What is one structural change institutions must make to move from measuring access to delivering economic outcomes?
I can go first, and I would say the one structural change is, and back to Dr. Smith's comment about being able to measure it. Institutions can't do this on their own. The data are not available for them. So partnering with workforce entities and whether it's at the state or the local level, partnering with other data sources are going to be really critical for them to get a fuller picture of how their students are performing post completion.
Yeah, I can build on that. And it's there was a attendee who actually spoke to this in the Q&A, but I think alignment with things like internships and work-based learning and apprenticeships, getting students the opportunity to get real tangible skills and work experience in their field that's related to what they're studying. I think that's going to be incredibly important. And I would say that institutions have started to pivot in this way, maybe not in response to ROI, but in response to, other directives and other threats, quite honestly, to higher education. So I think anything that we can do to get students to get into, to get into work that's related to what they're studying, and to get as soon as possible, so they can start to build some experience and advance in their careers, I think would be very important.
Thank you. One more person want to add to that?
Sure, I'll jump in. One thing that I'm really excited about, some work that Compton is doing with West LA and El Camino College, focused on embedding work-based learning into programs of study, building off of Dr. Harris's comment. And since most, if not every student is already working, it's really thinking about how do we leverage what's already happening to deepen learning and strengthen these relationships and connections to good careers. From some Cal Computes research and research from others, that We see that students that get internships are more satisfied with their post-career outcomes. They get paid more, are more likely to be employed in jobs that tie professional careers. But we also found, looking more specifically at internships, is that very few students do them. So internship participation rates for Black students is around 5%, compared to 9% for white and 10% for Asian students. So very low across the board. But we do, again, find that if we can make that work, and I know it's a lot of work to make happen, is really critical. And when students were asked why didn't they do an internship, the top two reasons were, I didn't know where to find one, and my course loads were too heavy. So if institutions can integrate internships and other forms of work-based learning into programs of study, you tackle those top two barriers for students.
I love that. And Dr. Jez, that brings me to a question that was posed in the chat to you specifically. Would you mind elaborating on the notion that there's no better investment than a college degree?
Sure. I dropped in chat some links, I think the chat links to the research. It's not our research, but people looked at sort of over time what's been the best investment, the returns, and it's like stocks, bonds, gold. I think the sort of like major typical investments that people make, and the college degree is still number one. With all these caveats that like it is uneven by race, by region, by program of study, by award level, et cetera. And it's worth unpacking, I think, really clearly for students. Another recent study, which I can drop also in chat in a sec, found that in the when students were given information on their FAFSA around earnings for programs that they were submitting their, that they wanted to submit their FAFSA to, if the earnings were low, they were less likely to, I'm gonna get the findings wrong, so let me just put it in chat. But like students are responsive and they do care about the outcomes. If we can give them actionable labor market information, we'll make informed choices.
Thank you. And as we're wrapping things up, I just want to ask you to think about one statement you would pose to the institutions, if you could help us. How do we ensure that those outcomes translate into real economic mobility? What is your advice to the practitioners at the institutions?
I'm going to start to that by asking the institutions to build out detailed, structured advising systems that guide students from enrollment to employment. So our wraparound advising has to shift from being reactive to proactive. It must be program specific, not generic. Students shouldn't have to go seek advisors out. They should find them. And I think especially as it pertains to our students, to Black students, to first generation who have no knowledge of what they're doing or where they could end up, the advising must include labor market transparency. They must be integrated with career services. You have to know what you do, where it's going to end up, where you're going to, what you're going to do with it, what you could potentially make. And that's part of something that the institution should see as their, as part of the things that they provide for their students as well to guarantee success.
Well, thank you to each one of our panelists today. We appreciate the wisdom that you have bestowed upon us. We appreciate the work that you do. And we will then pass it on to Carl because we have some more hosts that want to show us more panelists.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Dr. Huffman. And again, thank you to that panel. What great information for us to listen to, learn from, and implement. And now it's my pleasure to pass the mic to the illustrious OGs, Dr. Helen Young and the new Dr. Herb English. Take it away, doctors.
Thank you, Brother Carl. Thank you, Dr. Huffman. We appreciate that. Where you at, Dr. English? I don't see you in the house yet. We are so excited. You there, brother? All right.
I'm right here with you.
Gotta have my road dog. That's my road dog, y'all. We are so excited to be in day 2. How about you, Dr. English? You feeling good about day 2?
I'm loving day 2, and I really, Dr. Smith touched on something. We really got to redefine what student success is for our students. Way more
Absolutely.
Goes on before they walk across that stage or receive that certification. So
Come on now.
that hit home for me today. We have to redefine what student success is.
Wow. I wrote down so many quotes from her. I think I could start my own book. So thank you to the amazing group of panelists that we just had. So we are now ready for poll number 2, Dr. English. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that out. Poll number 2 for all of you attendees. What is the one action your institution must prioritize in the next 6 months to improve economic outcomes for Black students? Poll is on the screen. Please take a few minutes. We will have results of the poll, Dr. English, a little bit later.
Yes, we will.
All right. We are now going to prepare for our next group of amazing panelists of practitioners. These are folks who get down and dirty in the weeds. They're in it every day, trying to work through things. And as I was listening to this, the word that kept harkening back into my head, Dr. English, was ujima, in the Swahili word of economic partnerships. And this is what it's singing to me today is that we got to come together. We got to work together to have that ROI. Okay. So today, here are our amazing practitioners who will serve on this next panel. Dr. Eric Bishop, who serves as the interim president at Riverside City College. Dr. Davin Brown, VP of Student Services at Sac City and one of my dearest friends. And Dr. Alfred McQuarters, president at Los Angeles Trade Tech College. Welcome, one and all.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
So we're going to have some conversation here, panelists. We're going to continue this conversation on ROI. And I have the pleasure of presenting the first question to the three of you. The first question is as follows. How are you embedding economic mobility into your BSI, Black Serving Institution work, not just as an outcome, but as a design principle? Dr. Brown, we spent a lot of time together. I know you thought about this. I've heard you in deep conversations in other groups and organizations. Please share with us your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. First, I'd like to start by saying thank you for having me. It's always great to be in community with my people, especially having conversations as critical as this. And so when I think about Sac City specifically and our work toward economic mobility, it didn't start with ROI, to be honest. It started with getting a clearer picture of our institutional priorities and our data. So our BSI work group, after receiving designation, we established a work group and we began to identify our core institutional goals. And that started with the importance of increasing completion of transfer level math and English, increasing fall to spring persistence, and of a goal of completion of 30 units in the first year for our students. Lofty goal, but we understand that if we lower the bar, we are not sending a very clear message to the masses that our students are capable of doing so much more. And so with that, we did the hard work of really looking into our data, specifically success rates around gateway math and English, first year persistence and unit accumulation, as well as where our Black students are gaining or losing momentum early. And so from there, we identified 4 specific focus areas that ended up being our subgroup work for our BSI work. And that was gateway core success, understanding that if a student never completes transfer level math in year 1, we've already delayed their economic mobility, often by years, right? The second focus area for us is our first year momentum points, was inclusive of their interactions with counselors and the development of ed plans. The third group is our data monitoring and early interventions. And then our last group is our pipeline development specific to dual enrollment. Looking into that gave us clarity and direction with where we were going with this work. And that then allowed us to layer the economic mobility lens on top. And that's for us where the shift happened, honestly. We started moving from asking, are students progressing, to asking, is this progress actually leading to a livable wage? And that's important because we're interested in graduations, right? graduating our students into promise is how we like to frame it, opposed to poverty. That's important to us. So now we're working on how to treat economic mobility with our BSI work as a design constraint, where every decision is grounded in, will this move Black students toward a livable wage or not? And so that's pushing us to align our pathways to real labor market value. That is allowing us to integrate career and wage conversations earlier on in the career exploration efforts at the onset of onboarding our students, and also allowing us to redefine the success beyond completion toward economic mobility. Because ultimately, for us, this is about a return on promise, and that promise is clear for us. We will graduate students into promise, not into poverty. And so that's how we've begun to frame the work at Sac City.
Wow. Dr. McQuarters, tell us what's happening at LA Trade Tech.
Yes, and that is definitely a wow from Dr. Brown. I like that the promise emphasis.
Yes.
So at Trade Tech, part of this design principle is really asking the question, instead of did students get jobs, which you can easily wait until the end, to actually be more intentional. Asking the question, is this program intentionally designed to move Black students into family-sustaining careers? So asking that question at the beginning. So as a HBCU alumnus, Howard, I kind of draw on some of those informed principles and practices. So I'm kind of looking at building a campus culture at Trade Tech where Black students are not only served, but they are affirmed, they're expected, there's expectations, and they have the ability to lead. So as president, I also have a responsibility in that design principle. I have to look at my actual decision-making. So one of the things I always do, I actually have these decision-making cards. The decision-making cards have different student identities. So I'm looking at ethnicity, culture, even the things of socioeconomic status, veteran status, all those intersections that Black students have. And I'm asking my question, are my decisions keeping the students at the center of that? And are there any unintended consequences that's a result of my decisions? So for me, that's part of that design that's critical for any of this work as a BSI. And then as well, I then have the responsibility to embed it into work that we're doing. For example, we did our strategic educational master plan this year. So it needed to be embedded in there, removing systemic barriers to access and completion for our Black students. It needed to be embedded in there, ensuring cultural responsive teaching in our environment for our Black students. When we did our C plan, the same thing. When we did, I announced my president North Star. So for me, that's part of the design of being intentional about this work so that it's not just focused on outcomes. The outcomes are definitely going to result from the design, but I need to make sure that it's institutionalized in the work.
Wow. Wow. Dr. Bishop, bring us home with your thoughts on this first question.
Well, I think one of the things is we talk about return on investment and what are we doing? I think the first thing we have to do is say, are we investing? We can't expect a return if we're actually not putting forth the effort to invest in our students and the structures that will move them. And a good friend and colleague taught me a long time ago that you cannot change structure with program. And so I look at it as I step into this seat and this responsibility, there are 5 areas that I look at we have to control: hiring, budget, curriculum, service, and policy. And if we're not addressing those, then we are not investing in our students in a way that creates them to a Black serving institution. One of the beauties that we have at Riverside City College is I have a team who's ready to go, and they are already engaging with our K-12 Black students, our high school Black students. So to some respects, part of my job is to say go and to get out of the way, but then to look at where we want to get them. And something Dr. Smith said about the equity imperative, and people who know me say, I always say equity is intentional. And Dr. McQuarters just said that we have to be intentional with this effort. We have to be intentional. I think we are working to do work in a broken system that is upside down. When Dr. Smith talks about focus on the high ROI careers, part of the problem is we work in a system that does not value those high CTE careers. So we have to put our students in that, knowing that we take a hit. That's one of those design principles. Say, I will live with less efficiency if it means a student can walk out with a high skill, high demand, high paying job with their certificate. And that's the first path. But then to that piece of getting them back to finish the degree. And so we have to be very intentional in our structures. And I think that's the piece I want to build. But I'm lucky because I have a team that's ready to go and get us started.
Love it. Dr. English?
Man. I can't believe this. I mean, Dr. Brown, Gateway Course Success. I mean, I know your title is VP right now, but you're going to be a president real soon.
Amen and amen.
I think dual enrollment is a game changer, especially for Black students, connecting with Black parents to make sure that they're aware that their child can start college early, and return on the investment there is now college is not that expensive if I could take advantage of a year or two while I'm in high school. So, man, yeah, future president right there, y'all. But I'm about to go back to my president selfishly with question number 2, and then I'm going to come to you, Dr. McQuarters. Dr. Bishop, what are the biggest challenges institutions face in aligning Black servingness with economic outcomes, and how are you addressing them?
You want me to be honest?
Yes.
So 2, I don't have enough Black faculty teaching Black students for them to see that there's an outcome and that there's a path to the end of the road. But I do think then, as leaders of institutions, part of our responsibility is to align those jobs. It was talked about earlier in the program about where you live makes a difference. And we have low college going rates in the Inland Empire, but part of my job is to find those employers and systematize their willingness to hire our Black students and to hire our students so that they actually have the jobs. If we tell a student there's nothing better than a degree, but at the end of the degree, there's no job, there is no return on that investment, then to what did we do that for? So part of our responsibility is the challenge is to make sure the jobs are there and they don't actually have to leave the community that they've grown up and lived in. You know, we see an exodus from the Inland Empire to Orange County, to Los Angeles County, to other areas because that's where the jobs are. And so we have to, as structure and institutions, make sure that we are finding employment, creating those structures where the employment exists for them. Apprenticeships, we did not invest enough in apprenticeships to earn while you learn, to move them, and they can see that end while they're in school.
Wow, thank you. Dr. McQuarters, I mean, you're at a college that was literally founded on connecting students to livable wage positions in the trades. Please, the next question is yours.
Yes, so definitely that is part of trade tech's identity, but yet when you look at the research, Black workers still remain unrepresented in lower wage occupations and underrepresented in high wage fields. So that is, for me, one of the biggest challenges that still exists because that still is a wage gap of close to about 30%. So one of the things that we've been doing at Trade Tech is our business and civic engagement pathway has been leading some of the work of upper mobility. So this adds the element of entrepreneurship and business to any of our career technical education program. So now picture a cosmetology graduate who is finishing, and now they can make the decision to work in a shop in the community, but because of this training, they can now be the business owner. Or they can be the business owner of several businesses, or a unionized career pathways in hair and makeup in the industry right down the street in Hollywood. So that's one of the ways that we're really trying to address this so that students don't stay stagnant when they finish, that they have this upper mobility that is continuous and they're able to provide for their family and their self.
Thank you. And Davin, definitely want you to answer this question of the biggest challenges institutions face aligning Black servingness with economic outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. English. First, I'd like to say that I think far too often we romanticize our connection to higher education in ways that are harmful for us in our current line of thinking. When I think about the greatest challenge, I think about our system. It's no secret that the system of higher ed was not designed with us in mind. So now, when I think about how many years later we have Black students entering higher ed, our system is focused more on access than it is on economic mobility, right? And while access matters, access without outcomes is not equity. Even in our own work, before bringing in ROI into the lens, we saw that through the data, whether Black students were enrolling in attempting courses, not consistently succeeding in gateway courses, not always maintaining early momentum, not necessarily ending up on paths that would lead to strong economic outcomes. And for us here at Sac City, that's where the gap is. And unfortunately, it's the system that reinforces it. You have silos that exist between the instructional side of the house, the student services side of the house, workforce development, and let's not forget the administrative side of the house, right? We have metrics that stop at completion, and we have limited visibility, in my opinion, when it comes to the economic value of our programs. So our students, when they come here, are left to make what I would describe as high stakes decisions without clear information. And that in and of itself is inequitable. We're addressing that here at City by adding or building on the foundations of what we've already set in place, right? Using our focus areas of our BSI work to drive alignment across divisions. Strengthening our use of data for real-time live monitoring and intervention early, so we don't wait to the tail end of a Black student's experience to try and redirect them or support them. And also now layering in wage and workforce outcomes in ways that allows our students and our staff to make more informed decisions. And we're being explicit about it because for us, economic mobility is equity work. And so if we're not changing financial trajectories, then we have to question whether we're truly serving our students and providing them with the educational experiences that will change not only their lives, but the lives of their families in the ways that we promise. And so for us at City, we can't continue to celebrate access if it doesn't lead to mobility. That's what we call a bait and switch, or in our community, smoke and mirrors. And we're not about that, because for Black students, access without completion, without wages, without long-term opportunity is in fact not equity. It's actually a longer path to the same inequities that are already being perpetuated. So ROI for us has to mean that a student's life is materially and fundamentally different because they came through our institution here in Sacramento. And not that they just attended, but that they advanced. And if we, as administrators and as faculty and as classified professionals and as trustees, are not willing to hold ourselves accountable and to address the myriad of institutional challenges and systematic challenges that we face, we are in fact not redefining ROI. We're simply renaming the same gaps that we experienced and our ancestors have experienced time and time again.
Man, I'm just going to stretch this just one more question, 30 seconds each. And I'll come to you, Dr. McQuarters, 30 seconds. What is one change that you've made that is already improving economic outcomes for Black students?
Yeah, so elevating both early career exposure with post-completion outcomes. I think you have to do them both together. So for example, on our campus, we have a student-run restaurant. So the students are actually using their skills of professional baking and restaurant management on campus in a real-life experience. We have a fashion show that brings in fashion design, cosmetology, culinary, media arts, all together in one way where they do a production. And then combine that with our employment center, success center. We have a work search center on campus. We even have a high school. So all of those things together for me kind of is that change that allows the students to have the beginning from high school, where every student can get a high school diploma and associate degree from Trade Tech.
Got you. Dr. Bishop?
I think in my newness right now, it is the intentionality with which we are exposing our younger pre-college students to those economic outcomes and the college pathway as we continue to try to define what that means for the students who are currently here.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Davin Brown, go ahead and drop the mic.
What immediately comes to mind for me, Dr. English, is this work that we do around programs. And it's almost akin to treating a cold with a cough drop. You're only silencing the symptoms. You're not getting to the root core issue, right? And so for us, it's less about programmatic work and it's about systemic change. And so one of the more important shifts that I've shared already in some of my responses is really the broad intention to focus our data-informed action, and that will allow us to move more toward economic alignment and mobility. That leads us to the target focus areas that we talked about around transfer level math and English and momentum points and improving outcomes for students intentionally. But that alone cannot change how we prioritize the work. I want to be clear about that. So as we layer systematically the economic mobility lens, it allows us to push even further. So we're moving away from this programmatic approach to a more systems approach where students are expected. They're not expected to solely figure things out on their own, but our systems are now intentionally becoming designed for their experience from day one. So we're still building this out, but the shift is already clear in how we think about it, how we plan, and how we act. And I often find myself in our BSI meetings saying, this is not a program. This is a systemic change. Because at the end of the day, this is the line for us. It's not enough for Black students to enroll. It's not enough for them to complete. Anti-Blackness shows up in low expectations, delayed pathways, and under investments at our institutions. And our institutions benefit from the access metrics without being accountable for the outcomes. So for us, when it comes to ROI, it's not simply a metric. Again, it's a promise. And for Black students, particularly Black students at Sacramento City College, it has been a historically broken promise. And our responsibility is to reframe that. And so I'd end by saying, if we enroll Black students without ensuring they can complete, transfer, earn a living wage, and not expand opportunity, then again, we're managing inequity. With that said, we have to ensure that we are not simply progressing, but progressing toward economic mobility and bringing Black students along with us.
Man, this was an awesome panel. I want to thank you, panel, so much. A lot of gems you dropped today. Very thankful for you. Thank you for making the time. Please bring up the results of poll 2 and why that results is up. Dr. Young, any words, Dr. Young?
Man, I'm supposed to officially retire June 30, but when Dr. Davin Brown becomes president, I might have to come out and go to work for her, y'all. That woman is on fire.
Thank you.
Man, just dropping some gems. Dr. Bishop, Dr. McQuarters, Dr. Brown, I promise not poverty. Are we investing? Just some gems, Dr. English. What a day. What a day.
Wow. Well, as you can see from the poll, 41%.
Whoa.
Invest in career navigation and student support. You say that again. Invest in career navigation and student support overwhelmingly at 41%.
Wow.
That was day 2.
Woo!
I can't wait till tomorrow. Please tune in. Please tell someone. Please email, text someone to make sure that they're here tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Oh my God, Dr.
Tomorrow's
Young.
gonna be hot. It's all about no more gatekeeping. We're looking at math, Dr. English. Hardcore lens. We're gonna take the sunglasses off and we're gonna look at this and what it really is. But it's gonna be fire tomorrow.
It's gonna be fire. So we want to make sure that you promote the after party. Please promote the after party.
Yes.
Our socials is CA Black Students. Please make sure you tag us, you share. Socials are CA Black Students. And then we have the student hour. We have the student hour every day at 6 p.m. The sneaker ball. The sneaker ball Friday, April 24th. HBCU transfer
Come on
agreement.
now. That's my work right
HBCU
there.
transfer
Dr.
agreement.
English. That's my work.
And you started this. You started this. And the HBCU transfer grant. Tomorrow we have Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission.
Woo, woo.
We'll be speaking more on this during tomorrow's webinar. Quick preview of day 3. Now this is going to be monumental. No more gatekeeping. A redesigning math pathways for servingness. Transfer level math remains one of the most significant academic barriers to completion for many students. This session focuses on teaching and learning strategies that support Black student success in these courses. Participants will learn how math pathways can be intentionally structured to accelerate progress, close completion gaps, and align instructional practice with Black servingness. Panelists will discuss policy, pedagogy, and institutional redesign efforts that remove structural barriers while maintaining rigor. You do not want to miss tomorrow. I thank you. I'm full today. Thank you all.
Take care, everyone. See you tomorrow.
I'm thankful for the healing journey I'm on. Every day is a new strive toward my goals. From my root to my crown, for me to be healthy, happy, and whole. But I'm just a work in progress though, and giving thanks to the ancestors